I'm not occupying an office for profit in Rock City, and I am not receiving emolument.
But you are the director.
But I
you
am
the director.
I am the no.
From the corporation articles
hold on.
You are the director.
If you go to hold on, be patient, please. If you go to Registrar General, the forms ask for 2 directors. I am one director and another person. But in the functional role that I will receive emoluments or occupy an office for profit in the organization, or my activities in the organization will prevent me from doing my work in Parliament or as a minister, does not come in. So,
you're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guests have been Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, who is traveling at this moment but still makes time because of his commitment to Ghana. Kobina Atabedu is procurement specialist and management consultant. I save his name on my phone as procurement guru. Manasseh Azure Awene, investigative journalist, and presently studying at the Harvard University. Now, Samuel Nete George, MP Ningo Prampram, Deputy Ranking Member, Communications Committee of Parliament and Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. He's here in the studio with us together with Kobina Atabedu. And Bryce Simmons once again will open this next chapter for us briefly before he leaves us. We will also be joined by Lord Mensah, Associate Professor of Finance, University of Ghana Business School. He likes to say, pump up. Make sure that if you have to talk, we are talking. And some elders say, this is our country. Even in the midst of talking every day about these issues, see what is happening. What if we were not talking? Here are some of your messages. Adreno, greatness, excellence reign. Is that your name? You say sole sourcing is a big problem in Ghana now, and contracts are given to unqualified companies to just loot the state for no work done. Blueprints, Esikado Ketam. You say Newsfile, Ghanaians talk too much and do little. Today, SML and GRA, the next SNIT, we should allow state institutions to work. Really? Tanko Osman says, SML is a true definition of create, loot, and share. The fact that GRA cannot withhold a tax from an entity working for it should tell you the magnitude of the rot in the revenue agency. You tweet at Nyavrox, NyavoX. The next NDC government should demand the retrieval of all payments made by the government to SML under the illegal agreements, which have occasioned a huge financial loss to the state. Well, Martin Amidu would have gone to court and then say, because they are illegal, pay the money back, and then we'll go and chase Woyome. Again, this one says, indisputable data published by Imani Africa show clearly that the rate of increase in petroleum revenue has virtually been the same before and after SML's illegal entry into the downstream petroleum sector. Thanks for those messages. Now, let's begin again with Bright. But before we do that, I must tell you that this show is paid for by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex Tax, it's strong, it's tough, and Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Now, let's begin with Bright Simmons. Yes, Bright, on the back of this intention by SNIT to sell off, or as it were, bring in these private entities into its business. Let's hear what you have to say, and first, whether you do agree with the Coalition for Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance, who say that, and I quote, further exacerbating our concerns are revelations. So they issued a statement on the back of the SP petition and among other things. And they made commentaries that suggest that things are getting worse. And then they got to this paragraph and said, further exacerbating our concerns are revelations that SNIT and the Rock City Hotel, owned by the current Minister for Agriculture, are engaged in negotiations to purchase 4 hotels, including the Labadi Beach Hotel, one of Ghana's most esteemed and profitable hotels. One may ask, what is the public interest justification for a decision like that? And where is the minister raising the resources to acquire these assets? We welcome the actions taken by Mr. Okudzeto-Ablakwa, the MP, and his petition to SHRAJ, as it signals an important step towards addressing these issues. We also welcome the intervention of the organized labor, TUC and CLOCSAC, as owners of the pension funds. Indeed, everyone who pays SNIT contributions should be interested. These developments raise serious concerns about our fight against corruption and the prospects for accountable governance. Yes, Bright.
Thank you very much, Samson. Can you hear me well?
Very clearly.
Okay, so I have to be upfront about my incapacity on this matter to a certain extent. So our usual sources have failed us, and we don't have the full details of the Rock City submissions, which have characterized, or rather qualified it for this benefit. So some of my comments are about SNIT's investment practices generally. And I think I will focus on why I think the country could be better served by the way SNIT does its investment. I will not be able to make emphatic comments about Rock City itself because I don't have the information.
Great.
But we hope that in the course of the coming days and weeks, we will be challenging SNIT to put out all the information that they intend to submit to SHRAJ to the wider public. This is not a matter only for SHRAJ. And we commend the Member of Parliament who has initiated this inquiry. So let's start off with our concerns about SNIT generally and the way that it's managing the pensions of the workers of this country. The truth is, as everybody knows now, the International Labour Organization has an arrangement with SNIT in which, for relatively little money, it conducts actuarial analysis for SNIT. And that is conducted, the most recent one. And the conclusion, the most important conclusion from that study is that if we want SNIT to be sustainable, we have to pay double what we are currently paying in terms of our contribution to SNIT. So essentially the rate that we contribute at to the SNIT funds have to go up from about 11% to 22%. This is a huge and massively important point, because what that means is that we are at a stage where if we don't pay more into SNIT, SNIT will be unviable. We also know that ILO recommends we should increase the pension age by about 2 years as one of the pathways to making sure that the fund is sustainable. And thirdly, this is the reason for why these additional sacrifices are being demanded. Essentially, the reason why you have to pay more, the reason why you have to retire later as a worker in Ghana is because SNIT is experiencing significant falling rates of return. The money that you've given to SNIT is supposed to be invested to make sure it can continue to pay pensions going into the future. But the way it's been investing the money, and for various reasons affecting the way it's been investing the money, the returns on those investments have been falling significantly for a while now. And it's currently at one of its lowest that we've ever seen. The real rate of return, when you account for inflation, is one of the lowest that we've seen over the last couple of years. So that is the context. We've also been studying SNIT's activities for a while now at Imani. And there are a number of areas where we have significant concern, and some of them are exemplary. They exemplify why SNIT is in such trouble. We've been looking, for instance, at how it disposes of assets that it considers obsolete. You know, we've been in the trenches with the EC on this matter. So we started to look at other organizations that are in the public sector to see. And we've noticed that they've been gaining the residual values of some of these assets to the point where it allows for very rapid depreciation, and then they sell off and declare a profit because the residual values of these assets have been so depressed that it makes it look as if they are doing the country a favor by selling these assets off. So vehicles that are worth over 4 billion cedis are sold for about 460 million cedis, and a profit is declared because of the fact that, you know, the residual values of these assets have been so depressed. And this raises very important issues that we intend to be going into further. Now, having said that context, one, that, you know, the falling rate of return means that workers are being asked to double the amount that we contribute to SNIT, which will be, of course, at our cost, right? Because the employer only takes a percentage, a certain share of the burden. The rest of the burden comes to us as contributors. On top of that, you know, we have this situation with the requirement that we should increase pension age and the rest of it. So in that context, we have to ask ourselves whether the actions that SNIT now purpose to take in terms of divesting these assets of these hotels fall within a context of investment prudence that we are comfortable with. So I will, for instance, point to people that are not aware of, you know, whose attention have not been drawn to this, to take a very close look at what has happened at the NHIC, for instance. And what you find with the National Trust Holding Company is the fact that sometime in 2012, SNIT decided that it was going to go and more or less privatize one of its very important funds, the Informal Sector Fund, SISF, and decided that it was going to go into a strategic partnership with NHIC and give that to them.
That's supposed to be NTHC, right?
Yes, National Trust Holding Company.
Right.
And what has happened since then is something very bizarre and very opaque. What we do know is that the company appears to be insolvent because people can't get their money out. There's agitation in the sector. SNIT is backpedaling informal sector workers to contribute without accounting to us what has happened to the monies that were transferred to NHIC and the investment that it made into NHIC, including providing resources and assets for NHIC to be able to do the work that is done. So that brings up the point about the way it does its investment generally, and it raises questions about whether we can trust its judgment. Because part of the challenge about this Rock City transaction, apart from the conflict of interest issues, which I don't want to go into in great detail, because as I said, I want to look at all the information. For instance, has the minister set up a blind trust? What are the mechanisms that he's imposed to ensure there is true arm's length transaction involved here, and he's not using his political power to influence the transaction? I don't have all the details, so I'll be careful, I'll be wary.
That's a fair point to make, a fair disclosure or disclaimer to make.
Indeed. But when I look at the way SNIT makes its investments, it in a way underlines and to a certain extent vindicates why so many people are so suspicious of its judgment. So first of all, we take a look at the overall portfolio of SNIT. And what you see on the screen, as of 2020, that's the latest information that you can find in the public domain about how SNIT has split the money that we've given to it, the contribution we made, how it splits it among different investment categories. Now pay attention to the returns that it's making on the top, the equity investment. You can tell that at the last reckoning, SNIT was making its best returns from unlisted equity. What is unlisted equity? Essentially, it's investment that it has in companies, but those investments are not on the stock market. So you and I cannot go and buy them. It makes these off the market, in essence. Now, it tells us, therefore, that category of unlisted equities is a very profitable segment. We then go into it and say, okay, what are these companies and what are some of them? And you find out that the hotels that it wants to divest of are in that segment. They are in the unlisted equity segment. Okay. And there are a number of companies also in the unlisted equity segment. We don't have the breakdown, unfortunately, to determine among the unlisted equities in which these hotels are a category, a subcategory, whether the hotels are underperforming as a category. What I do know for sure is that when you look at this alternative investment category, particularly the real estate segment, there are serious challenges in terms of its ability to recoup investment that is made. It's put money into companies like Westfield Ridge, Switchback, Trust F-Line, FSS, etc. And if you read Public Account Committee records, you see hearing after hearing continue to talk about SNIT's difficulties in recouping investment from these areas. We don't see the same degree of concern being expressed about the hotels and some of these other areas. When you look at some other categories, we also know that the likes of what do you call that? The metro transport, the likes of the metro transport, the STC and the rest have been underperforming. Now, the question I'm trying to leave in the minds of your viewers, Samson, is what is the strategy based on which SNIT is currently deciding to exit some investments in the unlisted equity segment, given that is what is the highest performing. So essentially, when you take that category and you find out that it's doing very well as a group, and it decided that it wants to take some of them out and sell them because there's no strategic fit or it's not making enough money, we need some kind of document from SNIT that says that here is our strategy of the kinds of industries we want to be in Ghana. Some of the industries that we are in Ghana are performing at this rate, and we don't think they meet our benchmark. Currently, what they are saying is simply that we should just trust their judgment. And I think that given their history, their historical underperformance, we can't just trust their investment, their judgment. They have to explain to us what is the methodology based on which they decided that for this particular set of industries in Ghana, we don't want to invest in those industries anymore. The hotel industry as a segment in Ghana is a booming sector until recently, until after COVID. We saw massive investment going into hotels, particularly those in the 2-star, 3-star category. And we've also seen some continued investment in the 4-star and 5-star category. Now, the question is, are they saying to us that given all these other categories they have, that particular segment is the most troubling? Probably not. So which other segment are they divesting from? What is the strategy that is driving it? What is the benchmark performance by which account they then determine that this particular industry we don't want to continue to invest in, or this particular company doesn't fit our profile anymore? We've not seen anything like that. In fact, everything has been done with great opacity. And the reason why people don't trust the government, whenever they see a minister's name, they immediately become agitated, is because we don't receive enough assurance from the people that are managing our resources that they mean to do so in our best interest. And it's very clear from that evidence. So that's a very important point that we have to make. The other point that is critical is that, as everybody now knows, organized labor has significant representation on the board. I think 5 members or so out of a 12-member board of trustees. Now, if organized labor says they were not sufficiently consulted, and I've even heard union leaders say they don't know about it, then that raises the question whether indeed this is a process that is fully backed by the board of trustees. Because I don't understand how we can have organized labor representation on the board of trustees. And on that board of trustees, and if that board of trustees indeed has been intimately involved in these transactions, then organized labor comes back and says that we completely, adamantly disagree. It can only mean that the organized labor representatives on the board are not fully briefed. And if they are not fully briefed, then it means that the board of trustees does not either have a properly functioning investment committee that looks at the dynamics of these investments they've made and the portfolio results, and then determine that these categories, etc., we need to exit or we need to enter. Because if you have a properly functioning investment committee, organized labor will have to be represented on there, given their overall representation on the board of trustees as a whole.
All right.
If that was the case, then my view would be that we have a very significant problem. Last point I'll make. If you look at the set of hotels that have been listed, some of those hotels are performing very well.
That's true.
Even if you ignore the whole category, the hotels category, and you just focus purely on some specific companies like Labadi Beach, Grand Regency, you have to ask yourself, how could SNIT, a company or an organization whose overall rate of return is dropping, still have the need to divest of companies that appear to be returning? Why, for instance, did SNIT decide that it was going to sack the private sector manager of Labadi Beach, which I think was Legacy Hotels or their successor? He decided it was going to sack them and mismanage the hotel itself. And just a few months thereafter, went through the process of attempting now to dispose it off. When everybody knows that Labadi Beach is one of the profitable hotels in Ghana, it doesn't make any sense. So my view is that we need to be able to force SNIT, compel SNIT, to outline its investment strategy, explain who is on the investment committee, what has been the process through which the investment committee has selected these companies and determined that they don't fit either strategically or from a profit benchmark point of view, SNIT's future ambitions. And I think until we do that, we'll be heavily incapacitated in doing full justice to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in the face of what you know now, with the exception of the, very good sort of disclosure you make about not having sufficient documentation covering Rock City's bids, what do you think should be happening? Organized labor says this must be halted now, and they've gotten some significant support, including from the CSOs that have come together under the umbrella of the, democracy group, Accountable Democracy Group.
So I think everybody knows that SNIT's funds are primarily contributory in nature. The workers of this country own those funds. Mm-hmm. Now, organized labor is the principal representative of that stakeholder group. If organized labor says no, it's absolutely impossible for SNIT to override that degree of stakeholder disagreement and move forward. So until they satisfy organized labor, I don't think there is even a deal on the table, because the bulk of the money that they are investing, you are investing money on our behalf. Now, the people you're investing the money on whose behalf, of course, you are experts, and there is some due deference to the fact that you have expertise, and we'll give you that room. But the fact of the matter is that you still derive your legitimacy from your contributors. And their most organized representatives is organized labor. 5 out of 12 or so of your trustees.
Right. In that context, the Constitution, right from its preamble to Article 1, says sovereignty springs from us, we the people, and that sovereignty resides in us, and that we, the powers of government, are to be exercised for our welfare and on our behalf. And yet, we vote people into power. It's not everything we want they do. It's the same thing that applies in this situation, does it not?
Except that in the corporate governance point of view, it's almost as if the AGM, the shareholders of SNIT are the contributors. That's the best analog we can find from a corporate governance point of view. So in that narrow context, I struggle to see how, in the political economic context of Ghana today, if somebody from SNIT does not beat, a retreat, and with their tail between their leg, go over to organized labor and patch up, I just don't see from a political economic point of view how they will be able to move forward. I just don't see.
There are sometimes, though, that the things that the people or a section of the people may desire and protest over, it's actually not what is in the best interest of everyone, and what the leadership is doing may be preferred. Thank you very much, Bright. So we will take a quick break here, a very final break, and return to my guests in the studio on this discussion. And many are saying loud applause to Samuel Okudzeto, and some say that Ablakwa, that he's doing far better than many investigative journalists. The matters began to come up, they began to simmer, we became aware of some of these issues, but the journalists could not proactively investigate to be able to make a publication. It took him. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. We'll say many thanks to Bright Simmons, always, for dedicating time, doing such heavy lifting job, and helping with the analysis and the discussion in a way that is very informed and data-based. Now, my guest in the studio, I'll begin with Sam George this time round. So, Sami Okudzeto Ablakwa is the guy to blame for all of this happening, right?
He's the guy to be celebrated. Something.
Bright says he didn't have all the documents, and that's fair. But I think that there are some things we don't need documentation on. For example, Article 284 of the Constitution, which talks about conflict of interest. Then let me read. A public officer shall not put himself in a position where his personal interest conflicts or is likely to conflict with the performance of the function of his office. And then I follow up with Article 78.3, which says, a minister of state shall not hold any other office of profit or emolument, whether private or public, and whether directly or indirectly, unless otherwise permitted by the Speaker, acting on the recommendations of a committee of Parliament on the grounds that A, holding that office will not prejudice the work of a minister, and B, that no conflict of interest arises or would arise as a result of the minister holding that office.
The same thing is repeated in Article 98, Clause 2, for MPs.
For MPs, yes. And so that's why Parliament has a committee on members holding office of profit. It is chaired by the first Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Joseph Osei-Owusu, MP for Bekwai. And even lawyers who still run their chambers submit themselves to that committee to get a certificate to practice their craft whilst holding office. Now, the Honorable Brian Echampo, in his response on another network, has admitted that he has not submitted himself to that committee to get a certificate from the Speaker. One. So he's holding an office for profit other than that of a minister of state and other than that of a member of Parliament without a certificate from Mr. Speaker. You would say, but how do you say he's holding an office of profit? Because he stated that he's a non-executive shareholder. Well,
it's a company, not him. The company has separate legal personality from him.
Absolutely. In fact, that's where I was going. Thanks to the Honorable Kujetu Ablakwa, who has made a request from the Registrar of Companies Records, there are two directors of the company.
Oh, I thought he himself says he's the only director.
No, there are two. There are two shareholders.
Okay.
In fact, there are two directors. He's the only shareholder, but he and a lady, one Mrs. Clotte, are the directors of the company. Only two directors of Rock City. He is the only shareholder, holds 100% of the shares, and when you go to the beneficial ownership, he is the sole beneficial owner.
He says he's a non-executive director.
It doesn't mean that, but whether you are
non-executive... He says he doesn't take any profits. He doesn't get paid. No, he doesn't take any monies from the entity.
Help us here. You are the senior lawyer here. When they say somebody is the beneficial owner of a company,
in this case, he's not beneficial owner.
How?
In this case, he's the owner.
He's the owner and even beneficial owner of it. Now, there are only two directors. And he says he has absolutely no knowledge of this transaction. How is the business run? If his own business is engaged in buying 6 hotels, and he is the sole shareholder, and he has absolutely no knowledge of it, are we safe entrusting 6 hotels into the hands of somebody who runs his own business that way?
Actually, if he's a non-executive director, it means he's a controlling mind.
Yes.
So he's directly controlling
what is going on.
Yes.
Again, his own hotel, Rock City Hotel, has been partly operational since 2019. The records again show that since 2019, we have not seen any evidence that Rock City has paid taxes to the government of Ghana. Meanwhile, at least 2 of the hotels that are being offered to him. In 2021, Labadi Beach Hotel paid profit or dividends to SNIT of 10 million Ghana cedis. In 2022, paid dividends or profit to SNIT of 25 million. So in 2 years...
150% growth.
Yes. In fact, I can confidently say that in 2022, their profit was... I paid part of their profit because I had an event there. So me too, I paid some money there. Because it was it's a good facility. It's a profitable 5-star hotel. Making good profit. Now, it's been run down. The other one is the recently renovated Ridge Royal in Cape Coast. Look, and you know, one of the minority shareholders, and again, educate us and correct me if I'm wrong, when you have shareholders and even though they are minority shareholders, and you are going to, the majority shareholder wants to dispose of his interest, he's under obligation of notifying the minority shareholders of the intention to dispose of his interest and offer them first right of refusal. I know two shareholders in Ridge Royal who only got to find out about this transaction from the news.
So we understand their lawyers wrote to protest.
To protest. Because they were not informed, they were not written. Again, Elmina Beach Resort.
Actually contravenes the Companies Act
in
2019.
Elmina Beach Resort.
If the facts are proving.
Yes. Elmina Beach Resort. The Omanhene of the area, I think that's the
petition they have written, that he...
Stating that they have seen him coming there with his investors on the premises of Elmina, that he's taking it over. Meanwhile, they gave it to the state without requesting full compensation, because the state assured them that this was a state enterprise that will provide jobs for their people. Now it is moving into the hands of a private entity. Without their knowledge, the Omanhene is demanding that SNIT... That's full commercial compensation. So you ask yourself, on what basis have we packaged 6 hotels? And you see, something, it's not everything. See, on this particular transaction, and I will mention the name of the former Director General, Tinkran. He sat with a certain Ghanaian. And again, I take full responsibility for what I'm saying. Because this Ghanaian has called me and said to me, he's somebody I know very well. He's been in the hotel industry for over 35 years. Manages one of the biggest hotel chains in the US and across the world. He is their manager. He's Ghanaian. Look, he came and sat with Tinkran and said, I have an interest. If you want, we've heard you want to do this thing. We have an interest. And Tinkran told him point blank that, sorry, it's been decided already. You won't get it.
There are those who speculate that, or say that he lost that job because of this particular thing.
It played a role. Because, you see, people had objections to the way things were being done. Again, let's ask ourselves. And you see, this person has said to me, Sam, if Parliament sets up a probe, I will come and testify. And he says, look, you ask yourself in the hotel business, when you have a property that is struggling, you ask yourself 2 things. Is it the model of operation, or is it management? Those are the 2 key things you look at in a hotel business. Is the model of operating the hotels problematic, or is the model sound but the management is problematic? And so he said they even came in with a proposal that said, don't sell, we would come and do management of the hotels for you and make them profitable. They said no, because it's been cooked. And you see, it is this whole attempt of state capture. La Palme in 2012, again, in 2011, my sister did a function there. At that time, nobody wanted to go to Labadi Beach because La Palme was the ish. Labadi was literally run down before Legacy Hotels came to take it. La Palme was the place. La Palme has been intentionally run down and devalued by the management that was put in place. Look, you have a group CEO who now steps down to take the role of acting MD.
We understand a consultant did the work about...
the valuations.
Yes.
The consultant who valued it at 700,000 and took 600,000.
I understand it was up to 7 million plus Ghana cedis. It's almost a half the value $1 million US dollars.
Yes.
Yeah. So some assessment was done.
The cost of paying the assessment, the consultant who did the assessment of the properties to be disposed of.
Valuing the property as what, 7 million cedis?
No. That's the consultancy fee. Yes.
But the cost of the consultancy is almost half the value of the assets he says they should dispose. So
that's the reason I'm because if you break it down, you strip the assets down,
yes,
and you pick the real estate itself.
Yes.
What is the value of the real estate? The land on which
it's sitting. So you clearly see even the valuation itself is problematic. But you see, it has to be valued at that rate. And you see, someone said something, and that's the last point I'll make, so that I see you are itching to come in. Right now, if the reality is that SNIT wants to dispose of these hotels using high purchase, because that's basically what is going on. High purchase.
What do you mean?
It means they don't have cash.
The buyer is not paying full value for the properties. He's made a part deposit.
I'm not
Then-
able to do that.
AI, thank you. He's paying a a small deposit.
And
Then he's going to run the assets of the hotels and use the revenue to pay you for what. So if he can run it, and
are you talking like what was that in the ECG thing?
Yes,
Yes.
more like the PDS.
more like the
PDS.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the same scheme. So Brian has been given the 6 hotels. He's not paid full value for the 6 hotels.
4, not 6.
Four. He's not paid the full value of the 4, of what the evaluation is. He's paid, or he's alleged to have paid a part of the amount. He's now supposed to run the hotels, make money from the hotels, and use to pay off the rest of it. If the hotels can be run properly, such that they can pay that value, does that not come back to the question I raised at first?
Can we say Rock City rather than Brian? Because
equals to Brian.
Because it is when there are circumstances in law. In law, it is when there are circumstances like fraud that you pierce the veil and look for who is behind it.
But it does not appear to be fraudulent.
Yes. So you hold on. You have been itching to speak. Let me bring on Lord Mensah, Prof. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Samson, and good afternoon. Sorry, good morning to my co-panelists in the studio.
Right. What do you make of this with the limited time that we have? What do you make of it? Organized labor and also all those calling for a cessation of this deal, including the Coalition for Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance. What do you make of this?
I think we have to treat it as a business. And for business, we expect SNIT to make a business case. And if they are to make a business case, then they may have to convince contributors on the options available. And I look at this from 3 different streams. The first one is the current state where they decided to divest. And that is where possibly we may have to go into, the experience of, the company that is, buying the shares and all those. The possibility of, post, procurement contract, the monitoring and evaluation. If it's not a complete layoff, then SNIT will be expecting some cash flows after, the sale of the shares. Thus, Rock City has that kind of capacity, that experience to deliver as expected. If you look at Rock City, the present location of one of their major assets at the Kweu, can we say they're making, the necessary occupancy rate to warrant, the diversion of shares to Rock City? Those are the business questions we need to ask. Another option is to look for a special purpose vehicle, a hotel management agency to manage it for you. And if you put all this together with the current, diversion that we are discussing, then you are making a case for contributors. Something, let's also look at the market timing. If you want to, lay off an asset of such stature, you have to look at, is the time conducive, for the asset to attract the market value that is supposed to be. Looking at our economic conditions now, the best asset you can hold in your portfolio as a pension, agency is real estate. It doesn't matter the performance, because if you offload your asset and you receive liquid funds, and I believe that was objective, of the kind of, sales that SNIT is making. And in that regard, you receive this liquid fund, where are you going to invest it? Per the MPRA, regulations on pension investment, if you take out the real estate, all other investment you must hold must go into government instruments. Are you going to lend to government? A government that has done, haircut on its instrument? So the market timing is very, very important. And I believe all these things were not taken into consideration, and probably SNIT relied solely on auditing report that were coming that says that those hotels are not functioning, therefore they may have to lay them off. Laying off, interest in asset, you have to consider the market. And, if you don't take care, it will be a problem. Now, taking into consideration the current discussion that we are having, which was the option that they have taken, the shares diversion, we may have to ask the experience and all those of the company that is taking over. would they be able to deliver as expected? If the record shows that they won't be able to deliver, then obviously that is where we try to question the fair value of the shares that were, diverted, and then also the possible conflict of interest that we're bringing in, a minister of state that is who is at the same time, an MP of a sitting MP. So from where I sit, I think these are things that we may have to look at when it comes to the business aspect of this diversion.
Well, when you mentioned the conflict of interest matter, as in Article 78, Clause 3, and Article 98, Clause 2. 98, Clause 2 says if you're an MP, you must go through this. 78, Clause 3 says if you're a minister, you must go through this. So he's minister, he's MP, he should have gone through this. What exactly do you see here that may be problematic for someone who is a director of a business, a non-executive director of a business, being run without his involvement in the day-to-day activities of that business? That's what he says. The law says, the Constitution says, a minister of state, you can add, a member of parliament, shall not hold any other office of profit or emolument, whether private or public, and whether directly or indirectly, unless otherwise permitted by the Speaker acting on the recommendations of a committee of Parliament on the ground that holding that office will not prejudice the work of the minister, and that no conflict of interest arises or would arise as a result of the minister holding that office. What has come to his office that he is seeking to compromise where there will be a conflict of interest?
Yeah, of course. You may have to look at, the situation on the grounds, and then possibly look at clear definition as you've laid out. I've heard on other platforms that, they're saying the minister is a minister of Agric, and therefore is a bit distanced from, the issue at hand now. But I can tell you, conflict of interest is conflict of interest. It doesn't matter the persons involved. It doesn't matter the time. And also another platform where they've been indicating that, it happened some time ago. This is what politicians have been doing. So what is wrong with, this current, sale?
So what's the wrong? Is there wrong in the purchase by his hotel, or that the value is not what it should be bought for? In a situation where there have been bidders and their bid has won.
The law that you read, right? I'm not a lawyer, but the law in its own wisdom knows very well that if you allow such a thing, it can compromise fair value. And that is where the problem is.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lord Mensah. And now to you, Governor Atabedu. Let's hear what your view on this is. But I'd like to invite you, before we get to a close, that if you have never seen the Chief Justice, Gertrude Tokonu, Araba Esaba Tokonu, in a relaxed mode, having a conversation, join the Law Show tomorrow at 2 p.m. and watch her take on most of the things that you are concerned about and how they reflect on the delivery of justice. And the Law Show is doing that in collaboration with the Accra Bar on the occasion of Mother's Day when they visited the Chief Justice. Yes.
Okay. So, as a management specialist and a business leader, when you hear of something like this, you begin to ask, there's a way we think, and you begin to ask yourself a few questions. And I've put a number of them down. And I'll show you, anytime it came up, I'll show you to George and I'll say, here. So Bright made a point, George made a point, Prof has made a point. I'll start from the top, because if a fish would rot, it starts from the head. Now let's go to the NPA, the National Pensions Act, and let's go to Section 35. Which says that the governing board of the trust is a board of trustees consisting of A, a chairperson, B, 2 persons nominated by the president, at least one of whom is a woman, 2 representatives from employers association, 4 representatives from organized labor, one representative from National Pensioners Association, one representative from Ministry of Finance, not below the rank of a director, one representative from the Security Services, and then a Director General. Now, SNIT is a specialized institution. It's a professional, pensions is a division of insurance that looks after annuation and superannuation. So you would expect that at the board level, the Director General must first of all be a certified professional insurance person. That's the first one. Then there are certain skills and competencies, and I've had the benefit of working with this act, or working in that industry for 18 months.
Right.
So I know a bit about it. There are certain competencies that you would find. The first one is insurance, like I said, but also revenue mobilization and how to mobilize the funds into the organization. Then you need investment appraisal. So when the money comes in, what do we do with it? So you must have an investment board that will do the investment appraisals. Then you need actuarial science. Actuarial science will tell you that if I put this money here over 30 years, over 50 years, this is how much will come back. So it makes sense to put it here or not. Then there's funds management, how to do the placements, when to hold, when to let go, and all that. Then there's accounting, finance, and all that. Then monitoring and evaluation, project management. These are core skills you must find in an insurance company or in a pensions company. Now, if you look at the description of the board here, none of it. So it means you are going to have a board of how many people there, whom it is possible that none of them has any of these competencies. So how would they be able to direct? A board of directors are the controlling minds.
The problem about the appointments to the board by our presidents, our imperial presidents, they appoint over in excess of 4,000 or 6,000 or so, we are told.
But there is the reason why we have a Public Services Commission.
Correct.
That ordinarily is supposed to be doing recruitments.
But they are not powerful.
Service.
They are not powerful.
No, it is because the politicians
can they resist the politicians?
That function. You are a politician.
I'm a citizen at the table, with a chair at the table of politicians.
See, so the problem of this country is the politics that gets into a rather specialist area. So if you put up the board right now and the membership, I wish your production team could run a background check on them. The same thing is happening at the PPA. And I had the benefit of writing to the office of the president and copied the speaker and the council of state. And I said, if I look at the PPA board, there's a gap. The same thing is happening here. Now, I have a number of questions I put down, and they all raise them. So it goes without saying, it's like common sense. For example, if you want to sell a business, Professor talked about the market.
We're only a minute to go, unfortunately.
Professor talked about the market. The question is, who are their peers? 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star, 0-star. How are they performing? So if those ones are performing well, why is yours not performing? The next question is it because of the model you are running, or is it because of there's too much interference? If it is a profitable market and you are not doing well, it is possibly because there's too much interference. Why don't you give it out to a management company? So the solution is not to sell. Now, the question I'll ask the board is, where is their portfolio analysis report? In management, we use models and tools. For portfolio analysis, you are using a BCG matrix, which will tell you, these are the mix of investments I have. These are their performance. Which ones do I let go? If you go into that one, you would see, is this supposed to be here?
We should certainly make another time to enjoy the seminar that Kobna Tabedu is taking us through to learn about procurement, insurance, and what ought to be done right in this circumstance. But there are other people who are raising that, apart from what may look morally wrong, are we not trying to say, when it is outsiders coming in, that is good, but when it is one of our own who have been able to gather the muscle, financial muscle, and business acumen to be able to run, take over some of these institutions, then we have a problem with, and that will not help us grow. All right, my outfits, once again, is by Konati Clothing, and they are giving you 10% off if you are purchasing between now, making an order between now and Father's Day and Idul Adha, correct? Their number to call is 0244 676732. 676732. 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, join me with Chief Justice, exclusive on the law, on this platform.